It's a beautiful day. And I thank all of you for spending your time, making time out of your schedule to come and to be with us to learn about the Most High and about His Torah. It's a beautiful day. Let's see. And I thank all of you for put that on. There you go, mute. All right, wonderful. All right, here we go. Okay, we got somebody else coming in. Praise Yah. All right. I'll share my screen with you. All right, so this in particular week's Torah portion was called Dvareem, meaning the words. We saw a lot that's going on. Moshe tells the children of Israel about a lot of different things. He tells them about the wars that they had. He tells them about their experience in the wilderness. He conveys the message to them that the Most High has been talking to them about for the last 40 years. He's not talking to the first generation because they all have died, every last one of them. And that's more speaking to the men of the age of 20 years old and up. There was a question asked earlier this week, did the women die? No, they weren't part of that judgment, but they did die as a result of their age or other natural causes. So women did die, but the men, they're the ones who died. The reason why the Most High said that they were going to die is simply because they were the ones who refused to go into the land and take possession of it. And therefore, he called them an evil generation. And their names were not written in the second census. And he had to get rid of them because they were a problem for the children of Israel, right? And for, his people. So when I began to read this Torah portion this week, it was an idea that we found in it about wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And so I began to read and study in the book of Proverbs, Mishlei, where it talks about the beginning of wisdom is fear of Yahweh, and knowledge of the Kadosh One is understanding. So wisdom is a principal thing. It's everything that one should have, but without wisdom, one will never be able to obtain understanding. The goal of wisdom is to bring you to the knowledge of the Holy One, the set apart one, which is understanding. Okay, we're going to look into that more today. I think earlier this week, I told you that this is one of the things that I was thinking about focusing on. And the actual word for understanding, okay, is called being. Being. I put this picture here because I'm going to teach you some Hebrew, and I'm going to teach you how to say the words. But I also want to give you a picture, not that the word being means being. It's just something that you can reference and remember. It's easy to remember, okay? So understanding has this word called being, okay? It's not in being, but it's called understanding, called being. And being has what they call a parent root. In the Hebrew language, there are what they call a root system, okay? And the parent root is generally the two letters that you see. When I say parent, what I'm talking about are two letters. Those of you who have been in my Hebrew class understand what I'm saying. So this might be, this might be the father of the root. And the next part of it right here, she might be the mother, okay? And then so the root system consists of two letters, okay? That's the parent root right here, two letters. And if I wanted to make a child root, I only have to add how many letters?
One.
So then you would get a word like being. Okay. So that's where understanding, that's where that word comes from. Okay. But this right here is the parent. So if you want to know what the child is like, right? Hear me and hear me well. If you want to know what the child is like, the child consists of both the mother and the father. They share information, They share biological processes. They share the DNA, right, of the structure of the mother and the father. Okay. That's what they share. So they have that in common. So when you look at this picture, and this is very important for us to understand, you're not going to get taught this in a religious ceremony. Okay. They're not going to tell you this in religion. They're not going to tell you this in Christianity because they don't have any connection to the earth. Everything for them is spiritual. Okay. So when you look at this in particular root system right here, what you see is 1 and 2, and then up here is the third one. That one that comes out is called the stem. Okay. This right here, these two right here are called the root, which is called a shoresh. Okay. So you got a root and you got a stem. Okay. The stem is what comes up, that grows, and it goes all the way up through the surface of the ground. Okay. And that's called a stem root. Excuse me. The stem of the root. Okay. So the parents are down here beneath the surface. The child is beneath too, but the child comes out of the ground. Okay. So it grows. The child grows out of the root. So you got to capture this because gardening, agriculture are huge and they're part of the culture of the Hebrew people. Okay. So the first letter of that root called bean is a bet, right? And I put this here. A lot of you who love roulette, or we'll call it roulette. When you place a bet, I want you to remember how to say the word. I want you to know what it looks like, but I also too want you to, remember, how do you say it? You bet. Like bean, bean is understanding. I know it's going to mess you up because you're like, I thought a bean was something you eat. Well, in Hebrew, bean means understanding. This letter is called bet, like you're placing a bet. Okay. So, but also too, there's something about this letter that I want to show you. Okay. The letter itself, and have your mind open. The letter itself, from an agricultural standpoint, is what they call like this. Okay. And then what they do is they kind of flip it in this way to make it look like this. Okay. So this is the pictograph, right? This is a picture that you will find in ancient times. Okay. Like this. And what this is what there is to be a tent. So right here would be the door area where you walk in. Okay. The males stay on this side. Here's a wall right here. And then the woman and the children stay on this side. Okay. So that's where they get this idea how to make this in particular letter, but it all has to do with what they call a tent. But the name of the letter, say it to yourself, is bet. Okay. The bet represents a house, a tent, and a dwelling, right? A lot of you know this, right? And so the tent is really for who? Who's the tent for?
Tent is for the family.
The tent is for the family. Okay, so I'm laying the foundation. If you notice in my teachings, I always like to introduce the Hebrew understanding, right, of the letters and what they mean, so you can capture the essence of the teaching. Because if you don't understand this, when I say words like understanding, and I say words, because that's an abstract term, that means that's open and has really no concrete or no physical anything that you can attach it to. If I say understanding, I say, what does it mean? People are like, well, it means that you understand. Well, what is understanding? They don't know. So from a Hebraic perspective, we understand understanding to be about the family. It has to do with the tent. Okay. It has to do with the letter bet, which has to do with the dwelling, right? So it's the tent, it's the dwelling, it's the family. The next letter is called Nun. So why did I put this picture here?
Sounds like moon.
Yeah, it sounds just like noon. It sounds just like Noon, noon. I want you to remember it. Like in the noonday, right? So it sounds just like noon, and it's spelled just a little bit different, just has a U right here, which really is a double O like that. Okay, that's what this means. All right, or what the sound is. Still has the same two letters, has the same sound, noon, like noon. So noon for us doesn't mean the sunlight or a certain period of time in the day, but it means something else, right? Somebody tell me who's been in my Hebrew class, what does noon mean?
Seed.
It means a seed. Okay, so there's two forms of the noon. What I mean by forms is two ways that the noon is written out. Okay, so the form here is called the regular one of noon. So this is what it looks like. Okay, kind of looks like a bet a little bit, but it's a little bit shorter, right? So the bet actually has more of a that and a little line there and like that. Okay, so they look a little bit alike. This one here has a little down and then come here and then that, right? So you'll see different shapes of it or whatnot, and sometimes those two letters they're very similar, so you might get it confused. But the noon is a seed, as Akoti said. This one here is a final noon. So this one here is, when I say final, I'm saying that this in particular letter is still a noon. It just looks different. It's just going to be on the end of a word. Okay. We have a letter called a wa, which they look very much alike. The wa looks like this, but it's shorter. So you can get those two confused as well. Okay. And you'll learn that when you're in your Hebrew class as well. All right. So when we have these two letters, now keep in mind, we're just talking about the bet. Okay. We're just talking about the bet, which is the family, right? Or the tent or the dwelling. And we're also talking about the letter noon, right? Which is the seed. I have three words here called seed, sprout, and continue. The noon, right? The noon letter actually, from a concrete understanding, this is the noun of it. This is a concrete meaning. This is what it is. It is a seed, okay? What happens with that seed, it becomes a verb. This is the action of that in particular noun. This is what this noun does. It sprouts. That's the action. That's called a verb. All right. And then here you have this idea of continue, which that is an abstract term. Okay. So what the beauty about Hebrew is that they use concrete concepts, which we would say are physical things, in order to describe abstract terms. You see, languages that don't have this, like English, you can say a word like love and you don't even know what it means. It can mean something totally different to one person. It has several different meanings. You know, love for some people means being gay. It means being a homosexual. Love means that you love your animal. You're into bestiality. You say, well, those are some negative things to say about love. What I'm saying to you is, when we talk about that which is in the Hebrew culture, you're always going to have this idea of a concrete thought. Okay. An abstract thought is just what it is. It's just a thought. It has no concrete physical evidence of anything. It's all based on conjecture. It's all based on how someone feels or how someone perceives it, which is very, very dangerous, because what you need is what they would call a belief. That's a thought. You have a belief system, right? So when people ask you, well, what do you believe? Because that's the first thing that come out of their mouth is, what do you believe? You tell them, I don't believe anything. I know that a seed, when you put a seed into the ground, I know that it's going to sprout. And then there's an idea of it continuing, which is open to interpretation, because it may or may not continue depending on the circumstances. You see, that's why abstract is so dangerous. Okay. But for our class today, I'm trying to let you know that the foundation of the family has to do with a seed, It has to do with something sprouting. It has to do with something that's going to continue. And you say, well, why are you mentioning this? Well, because it has to do with understanding. The Most High is trying to open us up to this idea of understanding. Understanding is based in a seed, and it's based in something sprouting. It's based on something continuing. It's based on the family. So when you look at this picture, you see these seeds, and they grow, and they multiply. They're all in there. Now, every fruit or every grass type or every tree may have a certain amount of seeds. Some might be very prolific, like you would with a pomegranate. You know, grapes have seeds, watermelons have seeds, right? The Most High said these are good things. These are seeds. Because without the seed, nothing is going to sprout. See? And in each category of life, which you have in the animal life, you have the plant life, and you have the human life, humankind life. In each one of those, right, you have this idea of continuation. You have this idea of seed and growing and cycles, and you got to find out where you are in that cycle and how do you connect to it? How can you better understand what the Most High is trying to get us to understand, right? So we've been given belief systems, and everything that we've done hasn't been based upon concrete thought. So we think just having kids is having kids. We think, you know, we don't understand what the purpose of having children are. They're not so you can raise them and say, what a wonderful job you did. That's a great thing. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than just sending them to college or making sure they, you know, they didn't say bad words or get into too many fights and stuff like that. It's about this idea that I want you to capture. I want you to understand, right? That it's about seed, it's about sprouting, and it's about continuation, okay? In our Torah portion, we learned that Moses told the children of Israel, he was, you know, recounting to them that at one point he asked them to pick from each of your tribes men who are wise, understanding, and knowledgeable, and I will make them heads over you. When you read that, you were thinking, okay, that sounds like a wonderful thing. And then he says, you answered me and said, what you proposed to do is good. So this is a great idea. So I took your tribal leaders, wise and knowledgeable men, and appointed them heads over you, chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, chiefs of tens, and officials of your tribes. Before we just go right over it and we wouldn't even look at the verse. But earlier this week, we looked at it and it was missing something. Somebody tell me what's missing. What's missing from verse number 13 to verse number 14? He says, I told you to go from wise, understanding, and knowledgeable. And now all you told me is that you have wise and what? Knowledgeable men. So what was missing? Huh?
Understanding is missing.
Understanding, right? Yeah. So what they're missing, I'm going to bring us back in some slides. What they're missing is being. They're missing this. They're missing this. They're missing the family. They're missing the understanding. That's what they're missing. They're missing the idea about a seed and sprouting and continuation of the family. Okay, so when it says that they didn't have that in verse number 14, they're missing understanding, which is our word called being. They're missing that. When you look at being, it's the family and the sprout of the continuation. We're going to break this down. So in your Torah, this is something that, and if you didn't understand the language, you would never know what Moshe was really saying. Because he said, you guys, I made you heads over the tens of thousands, the thousands, the hundreds, the 50s, the tens, and the officials of your tribes. But you know that all those people right there all died. They all died. You know that, right? So he's talking to the second generation. He's letting them know what happened. That thousands of them died. So all the chiefs of all these people, because they didn't have any understanding, those people died. So what they didn't understand is the idea of building, because that's what happens when you have understanding. You need understanding to build something, okay? So this idea, this concept of building is part of understanding. And it means that you have to be able to take different elements, right, and bring it together, okay, which in our case, it would be wisdom, right, knowledge and understanding, the people, the families, put it all together and arrange it in a way that allows it to maintain its structure. When one is deciding to build something, okay, right, and we're talking about understanding, which has to do with the family. Okay, this is something that we have never been taught. So you got to open up your minds to what is being spoken today. Okay, some of you may have families. Some of you, well, you do have a family. You came from a family. Some of you might not have your own family, right? You're still probably looking to get married. You're probably looking to have children. Some of us have been married and have children and so forth and so on. Some have had children and raised children and had families and husbands and wives. So all of us have different experiences. But even within those experiences, we understand that when you're building something, you're going to need three things. You're going to need a plan, you're going to need skill, and you're going to need strength. When we talk about a plan, any type of building, right? I formerly was in the construction trade. I'm also into the franchise business, so I understand about building and I understand commercial settings, residential. I've done a lot of construction projects and whatnot in my lifetime. I understood that if one is to do anything, they have to have a plan. Okay. And you just can't go and say, okay, I want to build something, but you don't have a plan. And that plan has to be very detailed. You got to be very thorough about what you're talking about. You have to know how things work. Okay. So and remember, I might be talking about a building, right? But I'm really talking about understanding. If I'm talking about understanding, what I'm really talking about is a plan. If I'm talking about a plan, I'm talking about a family. That's what we're talking about. So one has to be very thorough in their planning. Just like if you plan for a building, you're going to have to plan for your family. Also, too, we understand in the idea of building, okay, of getting an understanding, one is going to have to possess some type of skill, meaning the competency to have the ability to do something well, right? To know that it's going to be efficient and to know that it's going to be successful, right? So this idea of understanding has, again, a connection to skill. So when one is doing a building, he has to have the competency, the ability to make sure that what I'm going to do, I have the ability to do so, okay? But this applies also to the what? Say it with me, family. Okay, so I'm talking about a building and I'm talking about family. Same concept, you need understanding. In this building process, I mentioned that we need strength. You're going to need strength to do the work. You're going to need the capacity to do it. You're going to need the muscle, the strength of it, but also too, you're going to have the fortitude to do it, along with the toughness that's necessary when you experience any type of hardship or any type of difficulties, because while you're building a home, you're going to run into, or any other building, you're going to run into some difficulties. Sometimes things are not going to line up. So with the same understanding, you're going to have a mental toughness as well when you're dealing with your family. Okay, because this is what Moshe was trying to convey to the children of Israel. He was talking to them about what their ancestors, their fathers and their mothers have done. And he was recounting to them all the things that they've done and all the things they've experienced. Somebody that was 5 years old when everyone else got killed, by the time they got to 45 years old, they were ready to go in the land. So they spent their whole childhood, young adult, teenage, everything out there. But he thought it was necessary that he would remind them about where they came from. And what he's trying to do here is saying, listen, at this moment, you guys were lacking something, okay? And what they were lacking was understanding, okay? What we need to get in our heads and be very, I don't want to say dogmatic about it, is this. Unless Yahweh builds the house, right? This is what it says in Psalms. Its builders labor in vain on it, okay? And that's not any house. That can be your very home. Because you're talking about the house, what you're talking about is the tent, What you're talking about is the dwelling. What you're talking about are the occupants inside. What you're talking about is the family. If the family is not built upon Yahweh, your laboring is going to be in vain, right? So we don't go out and literally build our house. I wish I did know how to do that. I do in some kind of way. I took some classes on how to build a house. I never had the finances to do it. That's one of the little things I regret not doing, is building my own home. But we still have to build our home even without having to do the construction part on the materials like wood and slabs and concrete and all these types of things. Those same principles apply when you're building a family for your own family. So the purpose of building anything is for you to establish the family. This is why we need understanding, okay? So we have knowledge and we might be wise, but if you're missing the understanding piece, then you and I's families are not going to succeed. They're not going to succeed. And I'm going to show that to you today, okay? So the purpose of building anything, right, is to establish the family, because that's what the Most High's intent is. So when we look at the prophet Yirmiyahu, it says this in chapter number 13, you've heard me say it before, but I needed to bring it out today as well, is that as a loincloth clings close to a man's loin, so I brought close to me the whole house of Israel and the whole house of Yehudah, the families, declares Yahweh, that they might be my people, building me a name and becoming a source of praise and splendor, meaning beauty. That's the reason why I chose you individuals to bring you close to me, so that you can build me a name, you can build me a reputation, okay? And so I'm choosing you for this very purpose. So when I'm talking about building me a name, I'm talking about building me a character. And also too, you're going to become a source, okay, a reservoir of praise and splendor. So I'm not going to be looking for praise or splendor or beauty from anyone else. I'm only looking it from you, because you are the family that I chose. In any building, any type of building project, there's always going to be an inspection, right? So, you know, as I was doing my construction projects, I have had a couple of buildings built out for my franchises. And one of the things they used to get us is when they come and do the inspection, of course, they didn't find anything, but it was always like a really, you know, nervous time for us, because we didn't know if something wasn't done right, you were going to have to get delayed in your construction. And everyone had to do their jobs and they had to do it well. Okay. So in this idea of understanding things, we have to go through what they would call an examination of the premises. In this case, the examination for us has to be not in the building that we live in per se, but also too, we're going to have to examine what is the premises of our families. This is what the Most High is communicating to us, that you're going to have to go through an inspection. I have to examine you. We find in the book of Amos, which is Hanabi, Hanabi means the prophet, Amos in chapter number 3, verse number 2, he says, hear this word, O people of Israel, that Yahweh has spoken concerning you. I'm not talking to nobody else. I'm only talking to you concerning the whole family that I brought up from the land of Egypt. You alone have I singled out of all the families of the earth. You're the only one that I know. You're the only family that I chose out of all the people on the face of the earth, out of all the families. This is the reason why I said that I've caused you to build me a name. And so you could be a source of praise and a source of beauty for me. That's the reason why I called you. That is why I will call you to account for all of your iniquities, meaning I'm doing an inspection on you. I'm going to find out, and I'm going to let you know what I find to be wrong with you and what's wrong with your family. Okay. I know we want to look at this and say, well, I'm okay. You know, I'm okay, but my son, he doesn't follow the Most High. I'm okay. Right. You hear me all the time. So you got to worry about yourself. It's true. But there's a consequence. There's a consequence that you, even if you're doing everything that's right, that you're going to bear. And I want to talk about that a little bit more. So we see here, our understanding is that the Most High has chosen only one family on the face of this earth out of all the families on the earth. And that family is Israel. That's the family. Like out of all the families of the grasses, he chooses the ones that he wants. Out of all the families of the animals, that he chooses the ones that he wants specifically for sin. He has an animal that he specifically uses for, the Day of Atonement. He has, certain grain that he asks for at certain times, right? Of the grain. And he says, fine flour. He chose that. There's certain colors out of the family of colors that he says, I want these colors. These are the ones that I've chosen. And so people generally don't have a problem with any of those other things that I mentioned. But when it comes to the children of Israel, that's when the problem arises. They're mad because they weren't chosen. They're very angry about not being chosen. They're angry at the fact that the one that he did choose are the ones who hate him. They're angry at the fact that the one that he did choose won't listen to him and they rebel against him. They're angry. Like, why would he do that for such a people? Why would he stay with this in particular family when he could have had any family on the face of this earth? He also says there's other families that I could have went and talked to, and you could go talk to them in a whole nother language and they would get it and they would understand it. So his people are blind and they're dumb. He says that they're stupid and they're foolish and they act like whores, and they are a whore. And yet he still wants a relationship. Why? Because they're part of his family. Just like in buildings, there are structural problems. There's structural problems. There's damages and deficiencies where things just don't work well. There's things that have issues, right? Because they weren't done properly. The foundation might have some cracks in it. You might hear when you turn your water on in your house, it may make a loud sound because the pressure wasn't right, or they put the pipes in the wrong way. You might, see a leaking faucet because somebody decided that they're going to do a half-baked job on it and not put the right adhesive there to stop it from leaking, using a Teflon tape or whatnot. We see a lot of problems. We see a lot of structural problems. And in our homes, right, these are issues, okay? But also, too, these are the same things that apply to the family. There's a lot of structural problems within your families and in my family, I know for sure, right? And damages and inefficiencies, things are just not running right. The sources, the resources are being used in the wrong way. Like, if you got a sprinkler that doesn't sprinkle where it's supposed to, water's being lost. If you have the wrong light bulb inside of your lamp, you keep putting the wrong, wattage in there, it's going to keep blowing out. So what we're finding is that we're not taking the time to do things right. And also, too, we understand that, when things were being built, they were built a certain way and everyone's been doing it that way, but maybe it's been done wrong. Maybe your family has been built on the wrong foundation. Maybe there's issues that just haven't been dealt with. I'll speak for myself. I got gutters that I got to get redone on my house. I got irrigation issues that I know that I have to be dealt with not because I'm the one who went out and made the problem, it's simply because it wasn't done right. And when you recognize these problems, you're going to have to take some type of action, because no matter how long you wait, it's going to have to be dealt with. Case in point, when you have issues in your family, structural problems, right? Well, people don't understand what's supposed to go where, when, and how. You're going to have damages and you're going to have inefficiencies, because these problems cause damages and they cause inefficiencies, which is a waste of resources. Also, too, what you're going to find in any type of project after this inspection, okay, is you might find some faults. You're going to find some things that are just unattractive and unsatisfactory, meaning they're poor workmanship. The unattractive meaning there's some ugliness. Someone came and did a paint job. And I'm giving the example of a house so you can kind of understand what I'm saying. And they didn't put the right amount of coat, so you see a little difference in the shades of the paint. You might see some drips of paint on the ground that they didn't clean up. When they put your wood in, when they put the corners on your baseboards, they didn't line it up properly. Instead of using a 45, they were more like a 42. So there's a gap right there that they didn't fill. So it's very ugly and it's unattractive. But yet there was labor that was used, as we just learned. The Most High said, if anybody builds anything and it's not, if Yahweh to build it, then labor is wasted their time. So what we see is that our families have been built not on what Yahweh said. So literally all of our labors have been in vain. It's been in vain. In your Torah portion this week, I don't know if you caught it, and it's also in the Haftarah, that there was this idea about criticism. There was criticism given to the children of Israel through Moshe. There was criticism given by the Most High to the children of Israel in your Haftarah in Isaiah, Yeshayahu chapter number 1. He begins to tell them all the things of what's wrong with them. He begins to construct a judgment about the things that he sees that he doesn't like. Is the things to remind them, to give them what they would call feedback on what they've been doing. You know, I understand that there's supposed to be constructive criticism, right? That's where they try to lean people to say, hey, give some positive feedback, try to give them, you know, a chance and look at the positive things and, you know, cause them to understand that there's a certain type of action. Here's the remedy to correct it. And, you know, make sure when you do it that you don't, you know, dehumanize them. Make sure that you don't, you know, deny the dignity and the honor that they possess, which I understand, right? I understand those things. But when you're talking to a group of people, okay, like Moshe was talking to the children of Israel, he reminded them of all their shortcomings and all the times in which their ancestors and themselves have forsaken the Most High. Criticism is going to be part of our correction and part of our project. There's always going to be some criticism. But why would you criticize somebody who's not willing to accept the criticism? Remember, we read earlier this week where the Most High said, I've come and I called unto them, but they didn't answer. His calling to them was to give them an account and to criticize them, like we just saw in Amos, where he says, of all the families of the earth, you're the only family I know. And that's the reason why I'm going to hold you account to your crimes and your transgressions. Criticism is a construction. It's a building of a judgment to tell you the things that Yah doesn't like. And a lot of us have to become open. And this has to do with getting an understanding. Criticism is part of understanding. If we don't get the criticism that we need, we won't be able to make the changes that we need to make in our families. And if we don't, and that's what it is. If someone said, hey, you know, this is what I see right here, and you can't accept it, you got a problem. Here's an idea what the Most High says in Yeshayahu chapter number 1, verse number 2. He says, hear, O heavens, and give ear. So are you saying that the heavens hear? Yes, they do. O earth, for Yahweh has spoken. They're listening. These two witnesses are listening. He said, I reared children and I brought them up and they have rebelled against me. This is what he says. Why the children? Why is he always talking about the children of Israel? Why is he always talking about the children he raised up? Because he's their father. He's their father. The reason why he chose us to be our father, he chose us so we could be his children, so we could be a reflection of his character. Because you and I, if you got a father and you got children, and you know that you got a house and you got a family, you got a dwelling. You have a family. Most High is saying that I'm your father. You are my children. This is my family. If the children are not reflecting the character of their father, that family is going to fail. If the father is not following the Most High and he builds his house not upon Yahweh's principles in the Torah, that family is going to fail. That house is going to fail. You remove the father out of the home is going to fail. It's not going to work. The father is there so the children can reflect his character. When he talks about finding faults and doing inspection, it's in order for us to change our character. The father sees things that he doesn't like in our character. The problem is not with Yah. It's not with his laws. It's not with his statutes. It's not with his Shabbats. It's not with his Moedim. It's not with what he said. The rock, his work is perfect. And all his ways are just, meaning they are judgment. Not, well, they're just, they're great. No, they are judgment. I'll see as I'm answering in a second. A trustworthy Elohim who does no wrong. He is righteous and straight. He's not crooked. He is not corrupt. The defect, the problem is in his children. They're a crooked and perverse generation. He's saying that you and I are twisted. We're contorted. He's straight, but yet you and I are crooked. Azania, go ahead.
Yes, you were speaking about fathers and sons, and I was thinking where it says in Rakira, and those that are left of you shall waste away in their iniquity, in your enemies' lands, also in their fathers' iniquities which are with them, they shall waste away. And if you look at our youth right now, I mean, it's like, I know our families are affected. If you look at the violence and the way that we are killing one another, I mean, there's so many ways that you can identify that we are not, we are unlike any other nation on the face of the earth. I mean, we truly are. It's just not only the fact that we can't point to where we come from, but if you look at the happenings in our community, I mean, we stand out in so many different ways from all other people. And that is in one of them. Our sins are so heavy laden right now. And so when you were talking about the fathers, and it really just stood out of my mind, because it's like, I mean, it's like it just seems like every weekend we get a phone call that we know somebody else that has passed, another young man. So it's just very sad, but it's what we're going through right now.
Yes, praise Yah, and thank you for that contribution. It is. The problem is in his children, right? So what are children? Well, children are a gift from the Most High. They're a gift. I didn't put a slide up here. I didn't think I need to put a slide to say it. They're a gift. Children are a gift, G-I-F-T, from the Most High. They're the fruit of you, right? They're the fruit of you, whether you're the man who planted the seed or you're the woman or the land that brought forth the seed, who's raising the seed. It's a gift, right? So the children are very, very important, okay? And the Hebrew name for children are called Banim. Banim. Banim has this idea of plurality of children, meaning both of sons and daughters, not just sons, but sons and daughters. It comes from the root word bane. Bane. Okay. But what are the letters? What are the two letters? What's the first letter? Somebody tell me.
Bet.
I want to place a bet. Okay. What's the next letter?
Final
Said it
noon.
earlier. That's a noon. That's a final noon. So this has to do with the family continuing. That's what a son is for. A son is to continue the family. The son is the bane. But also too, That word has a meaning of to build, construction. A son is a construction project. See? So it's very important on how you build your house. It's very important how you build your children. You understand? If you build them the wrong way, you're going to have a problem. The purpose of a son is like the idea of that tent, right? Which is that tent panel. Back in the ancient times, they had tent panels. And so, and was goat hair. And anytime there was a problem where it wore out, or they wanted to extend the tent and make it larger because the family was growing, they'd have to remove the old panel and put in a new one. And so in order for the tent to continue, in order for the family to continue, one has to continue to have banim, sons and daughters, in order for the family to grow, in order for it to expand. Remember? Seed, sprout, continue. See? So again, going back for the family, a lot of us will grow old and we got to be removed out of the wall and we go into the ground, like the tent, the goat hair was taken off of the tent panel and put on the ground. They would had some other use for it, but it was on the ground. And that was because the sun wore it down and was no longer effective. It was damaged and it was inefficient. So now the Most High is saying, listen, you need to be careful how you build your family, how you build your tent, because Yah's letting us know I'm careful about how I'm building my tent. If I would have let those rebels continue, guess what would have happened to my family? It would have been destroyed. The whole tent would have to come down. I'd have to destroy the whole entire planet. Because I only made the planet for Yisrael to bring me praise and to bring me splendor and to be the people that I call to be my children. And if that's not going to happen, there's no reason for nobody to exist. We got to understand the plan. We got to understand Yah's plan. We have to get understanding. Those people that rebelled against the Most High were not thinking about their families. They weren't thinking about the future generations. And we have that same problem today. They don't want to continue. They don't want the seed to continue. That's why there's this prostitution going on. Cut off the seed. That's why no one wants to continue. That's why she just mentioned the young men are being blown away on the streets. Their family lines are being destroyed. There's no new life that's coming and sprouting up out of Israel that's worthy of being put into the family of Yah. And therefore, they're not going to continue. Yah is not going to allow us to keep planting bad stuff and thinking that we're going to get better results. If you don't take care of your family, you don't take care of your house, you're not watching nothing, you're not doing no inspection, you're going with the status quo, your house is going to be ruined. Your family is going to be ruined. It is not because of Yah, it's because of us. Yah is interested in scrutinizing the character of his children. I know we don't want to hear it. I know we don't want him to say nothing to us. That's why we accept I'm saved and I don't have to do anything. JC did it for me. He hung on the cross. I don't have no responsibility for nothing. Yah is scrutinizing the character of his children. In your Haftarah, it says, an ox knows his owner and a donkey his master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people take no thought. That no thought meaning they don't cause themselves to think and have understanding. It wasn't just in Dvareem chapter number 1, and Moses said that, I asked you guys to give me the people who had wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. But you guys gave me people who have wisdom and knowledge, but nobody had any understanding. Yah is saying an ox knows its owner and a donkey its crib, its master's crib. It knows where it eats from. It knows its trough. It knows where it's going to go get fed. It knows who owns it. It knows who it works for. It knows who is responsible for it. Israel does not know. My children don't know who's feeding them. They don't know that I'm the owner. They never give it any consideration or thought that if it wasn't for me, you would have nothing. They don't even give it any thought. That means that they don't have any understanding. Yada shor konehu wa kamor evus ba'ala Yisrael lo yada ami lo ditbonan. Meaning that they have not even given it a second thought. They don't understand that I'm the one that strengthens them. You need Yah's strength to do the work that Yah wants you to do. You can't understand who Yah is without understanding. So you could do the work. That word right there, hith, banon, or banan. This hith right here is reflexive. That means that they have to do this work on themselves. That means that they're going to do it. Like if you have to feed yourself, okay? You have to feed yourself. You have to clothe oneself. You have to bathe oneself. He's saying that they don't have his banon. They don't cause themselves to think about nothing. They're just going along every single day as if he doesn't exist. They don't know. They're not intimate with him. That's what that word yada means. They haven't become intimate with him. But he's saying that you guys, an ox knows me. A donkey knows me. These are animals of burden. They understand the burden that they carry. They understand the work that I told them they have to do. They understand what my plan is. They understand their plan, right? How they play a role in my plan about what I want them to do for me. But Israel doesn't know. That word right there, bone, has to do with a plan. Same letters. Same letters right there. That's a bet and a noon. Right here is this wa, which can tell you that's an O vowel called bone. They don't know the bone. They don't know the plan. They have caused themselves not to know the plan. Moses told the children of Israel in Dvareem 29:3, yet to this day, Yahweh has not given you a mind to bone, to understand, or eyes to see, or ears to hear. You don't have the plan. He hasn't made it known to them what the plan was. And the reason why he didn't give them the plan is because he knew that they didn't want to hear it. Why would you give understanding to a fool? Why would you give it to a rebel? Why would you even try to correct somebody that don't want to be corrected? Why would you sit and have a discussion with somebody that you say, look, I really want to do something. I have a plan for the family, and they don't want to hear it. Yah has a plan for the family that they don't want to hear it. That's why he gave them land. That's why he said, I'm giving you descendants. That's why he has to be our Elohim, so you and I can continue. But why would you waste discipline on a fool? Why would you correct somebody that's going to hate you because you tell them and you criticize them and you tell them something that's constructive to make them better if they don't want to hear it? You damage yourself when you do that. That's what we're told in the book of Proverbs, chapter number 9. A fool will hate you if you try to correct them. But a wise person would love you. They'll embrace what you're saying. You see? because correction, they love correction. They want to do what's right. So people who don't want to hear what being criticized, they always want somebody to tell them how wonderful they are, what a great job you've done, but they don't want to hear about where these are the areas that you need to work on. That's a fool. And you don't want to waste your time because they don't understand the plan. If the family doesn't have a plan, like a building, it's never going to happen. And if you do have a family and you don't have a plan, and the plan is Yah's not including that plan, your family is going to be ruined. Not only does Yah have a plan for the family, but he has a plan for you. See, the goal is to get Israel as individuals collectively and households to buy into Yah's plan. That's what it was. They had to have what they would call willingness, because he does mention Caleb and Joshua in chapter number 1, after he gives them criticism about how they were acting and behaving, complaining, and how they died and how they refused to go into the land. He did mention those two individuals. He said, hey, they were wholehearted. They walked wholeheartedly after me. That's the reason why they went. Because they understood the plan. So how did they get it? And these other ones didn't. They were willing to listen. They were willing to comprehend. When Yah is talking to us as individuals, he wants you to know too, that I'm not just going to scrutinize my children as a family, but I'm going to scrutinize you as an individual. I'm going to let you know how I feel about you, because it starts with you. You see, it's always going to start with one, and then you put the two together, there'll be three. It's the mother and the father. They come together. Most High will scrutinize both the male and the female. I want to tell you about your character. King Dawid says something in Tehillim or Psalms 139. He says this: Yahweh, you have probed me, and you know me. You know when I sit and you know when I stand up. You discern, you understand my ways, or my inclinations. Meaning you understand what I have planned, my thoughts from afar. You scrutinize my daily activities daily. You're familiar with all my ways. That before I speak even a word, you know all about it already. When I read that this week, I tell you, I was mindful of everything that I did during the week. When I understood that Yah's not just looking at me and following me and watching me, he's not watching me without a purpose. The purpose of a father is to scrutinize the daily activities of their children, to find out whether or not how they can improve. It's not to scrutinize. People look at that word and say, scrutinize, you're putting me down. No, I'm looking for ways to make improvements. Why would you do an inspection? Just so you can find fault? No, so I can make improvements. So I could get better efficiencies. I could get better productivity. But people are not interested in productivity, and they're not interested in being corrected. They're not interested in being efficient. They want to be efficient in their ways, but not in the ways of the Most High. Yahweh scrutinizes. He examines what we do on a daily basis. He understands what our thoughts are. Well, what we find in this examination that I found, I'll speak for myself. I could talk about my family. I can. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if I talked about them. You know why? Because it's not about just me and my family. It's about Israel. What we see, okay, is a break in continuity. What do I mean by that? I have there a lack of consistent action. I will testify you today that I have breaks inside of my actions with the Most High. Continuity has this idea of a current with electricity. Okay. It also has the idea of to continue, right? You can see continue in that word continuity. Right here. Continue. Okay. And it means that something is going without a break. Just keeps going without a break. Okay. Having a break in continuity means that you're going, stop, break, goes, stop, 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 go, stop, stop, go. You understand? So there's a lack of consistent action. This is one of the biggest problems that we have in our lives. It starts with you as an individual. You and I are going to have to learn how to be consistent with Yah. We can't have this. Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn off, breaks. It doesn't work. If you had a light that you turned on and it was doing that, you would try to say, well, what's wrong with it? You would want to fix it. You'd have to critique it. You understand? You have to look at it and evaluate and examine, why is it having a break? Why is the light flickering? It's not doing its job. There's a break in what they would call continuity. There's something wrong, okay? So I discovered this week that I was being inconsistent in my actions with the Most High. I was. And I'm not saying I did anything really bad, like, some super lustful and sinful. No, what I'm saying is that, we have this what they call a habit of just being yourself and thinking the way that you normally think. The Most High wants us to be consistent in our actions, right? Consistency is important when you talk about when you raise your family. You can tell your child one thing, but if you're not consistent, they might clean up their room one day the right way. The next day, you might see a whole bunch of dishes in their room with bowls and stuff that they ate and trash and empty cans. And they only clean it up because somebody's coming over, not because they're being consistent. You might see, trash on the floor, right? Why? It's inconsistent. You see, when you read your Torah, are you being consistent, or you just got some breaks? You filling in with other fillers, just doing your regular thing. You got to think about your family. What's happened to the family, right, is they've become asymmetrical. When there's inconsistency in a person, it's going to spill off into the family. If the father is being inconsistent with his instruction and his teaching, then there's going to be inconsistencies in the people that are supposed to be underneath his leadership. You see? And so therefore, the family now has become unbalanced, crooked, and lopsided, meaning that you're not going to see anything that has any structural integrity. When something's unbalanced, it means it can fall over. When it's crooked, it's not straight, so it's not going to line up the right way. Therefore, you're going to incur damages, and you're going to find faults, and it's going to be inefficiencies. Because we didn't want to take the time to make the family symmetrical, balanced, straight, and being square versus lopsided. When I say asymmetrical, what I'm talking about is the family structure has to have a balance of power. It has to be, the power has to be where it's supposed to be. If it's not, it becomes unbalanced or imbalanced. And things will then begin to get crooked and lopsided and therefore become asymmetrical. You're going to have problems. And this is all because we lack understanding. If you don't have understanding, you can't build properly. The prophet, the Nabi, Yeshayahu in chapter number 1, verse number 4, right after number 3 about they don't know, an ox knows his owner and his donkey knows his master's feeding trough, but Israel does not know, they don't even consider it. He says, a sinful nation, People laden with iniquity, seed of evildoers, depraved children. They have forsaken Yahweh, and they spurn the Kadosh one of Israel. They turn their backs. All right, so you see, I have other things on here that are giving you a clue about this idea. You can see, you all can see the screen. It says called participle. And this one says Hifel participle. And this one here is a Hifel is participle. And then here I have down here participles. And what a participle is, it's a present tense. It means the action is happening like an ing. So when we talk about people who are sinful, what he's saying is they are sinning. Okay, right now they're sinning nation. He says there are people that are heavy with iniquity. They're heavy with it. Okay, so remember the ox and the donkey, right? They're carrying the load, but Israel's carrying another load. Israel's carrying the load of iniquity, of twistedness and perversity. That's why he says they're children that are perverse. He said they're a seed. Remember we talked about the bane, right? We talked about the continuing. We talked about the seed, the sprout, and the continuance. He's saying what they are is a seed that continues, that are sprouting of those who are doing evil. They're doings of evil right now. And here the Hifel here is they're causing evil. That's what a Hifel is. A Hifel is causation. So it's not just they're doing it, but they're causing it. Okay, that's what a Hifel is. So they're causing this to happen on a regular basis, and also too, they're depraved. They're causing the deprivation, right? These children, right? So what it is this word here means that what they call is a shakath in Hebrew, meaning that they are going to become destroyed or become a ruin. Okay, that's what's going on because they turn their backs on Yah. If you notice, he uses a couple of different terms here. The first one he uses is a nation. The second one he uses is a people. The third one he gets right down to the individual, right? And then he points the seed to the children. He's letting us know what's going to happen, okay? And what is happening. So sinning and being twisted and having these things and continuing in this way of not having any understanding, you and I are going to be ruined. If you continue to let sin reign and have power, and you continue not to live in a life of understanding, you continue not to understand the importance of the seed, which is the son and the daughter, and having them sprout and bringing them up the right way in a straight way instead of perversity and evil, you and I are going to have a problem. The problem is going to be your family is going to be ruined. That's what's going to happen. People are mad at Yah because he decided to go in and kill everybody inside of these towns. He decided to get rid of the people that weren't any good, that were not doing anything resourceful, weren't of any benefit to the planet. And they're mad at him because he decided that. They're mad at him because he exiled Israel. They're mad because he decided to kill all the boys and the women who have slept with a man. You don't understand it because you don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand family. The Most High understands family. We don't. Right now, this is the greatest threat to Israel. This is the greatest threat to Israel. This is the greatest challenge to Israel, is your children and your family. There's no reason to exist if you're not going to do what Yah is telling you to do. Therefore, if we decided we don't want to do what he says, it's okay, great. You ruined your family. Let's move on next. Your son is deciding not to do what you tell him, to raise him up in a way that he's saying, I'm going to build my house on Yah, and he wants to build it on somebody else or another God. He just killed his whole entire family. He just destroyed his whole entire family. You have a woman who doesn't want to listen to her husband, who's following the Most High. You destroyed your family. Yah didn't destroy your family, you did. We got to take responsibility for our actions. Forsake foolishness and live. And walk in the way of understanding. To walk in the way of understanding means that you understand Yah. and you understand the Holy One, the Kadosh One of Israel. It means that you understand the purpose and the plan for the family. It means that you are going to be the one who's happy because you fear Yahweh. You're going to be the one who's going to follow his ways. If you do that, you will enjoy the fruit of your labors. You shall be happy and you shall prosper. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your sons like olive saplings around your table. So shall the man who fears Yahweh be blessed. Yes. You see? So family needs to go through a renovation. We need to find a way to restore life back to the family. If we know that the family is in a state of being ruined, you have an opportunity to change that. You can change the course of your action. You can change your mindset. You can humble yourself and say, I can take criticism, and now it's time for me to sit down and come up with a plan. I want to renovate like I got a house that's damaged. If your family left you a house, the foundation was cracked, fix the foundation. Well, I don't have the money. Guess what? You might have to do it yourself. You might have to learn how to do the foundation yourself. I got to paint my house. I don't have any money. It costs tens of thousands of dollars to do this. Then you go get a paintbrush and you learn how to paint. Sitting around and doing nothing is not the answer. We pay too many people for stuff that you and I can learn ourselves. End of story. But you need understanding. You need skill. You need to sit down and take criticism and understand, okay, I don't understand this. I need to learn. That's part of criticism. Taking some course of action, some actionable thing in order to make an improvement, because you're interested in revitalizing and restoring life to something that is going dead. You can do this. Family has to be first, because it's the foundation of everything. You are the root of the children. Family first. With the idea of a person who has to be first willing to listen to the criticism, willing to do the work, willing to learn, willing to go over the plans, willing to take the time to go to the details, willing to find the damages, do the inspection, willing to say, yeah, you're in charge. How do you want to build this house? There are growth opportunities that are found in your family. But it's only for those who are oriented in the idea, who love the idea of growth and development. This doesn't work for people who don't care. You would expect or hope that they would have an appreciation and they would value what you're saying. They wouldn't think what you were saying was worthless. They would sit down and say, okay, well, you know, we can find some enjoyment in this. There's enjoyment in growth. My wife has a garden. She went out on vacation, her and the kids. She said, hey, when I'm gone, can you, make sure you do take care of my garden. And I watered the garden, and I took care of the garden for her. And she was able to pull out her first fruits, some nice fruit that she pulled from her garden. She has enjoyment because she did the work, right? She needed some help with that. She got it done, and now she can enjoy it. But see, the same work that you put into a garden is the same work that you need to put in your family. You see? So other people can enjoy your work from the growth, and they can value what you're talking about. You understand? You and I can have all the skill in the world, but it's only going to be beneficial to those who can appreciate it and value it. I say Shabbat Shalom to you. I know this message today was one of critique. I know it's one that ruffles a little feathers, but I don't care. You know why? Because I care about our families. Yah cares about our families. We can read all we want to read about what Moshe told the children of Israel. But if you don't pick up the fundamental ideas and concepts that are being explained, and you can't see that, then things are going to be status quo, and there's never going to be any growth and development. The Most High does not want your family to be destroyed. He doesn't want your family to be destroyed. He wants your family to thrive, and he wants your family to continue. So you got to get your family in order. And if you don't have a family, and you decide that you want to have a family, you better make sure that you build it upon the principles that are found in the Torah. And if you find a woman who's not willing to do it, you move on. Because you're not talking about her, you're talking about your seed. You're talking about your sons and your daughters. So if the land doesn't want to yield, the land doesn't want to give, you better pick up on it. And you sisters out here that are the land and you're good soil, you better make sure that you don't allow anybody come and plant anything inside of you that are not willing to follow the Most High to raise that up in righteousness and straightness. Someone who's going to care for you, someone who's going to be loyal to you and be attentive to your garden. You hear what I'm saying? That's what it's about. That's what Israel's about. We miss that because we've been on this thing about being saved and going to heaven. You need to find out how you're going to live today. What are you doing in your family right now? You really think we're going to stand before the Most High and not have to give an account on how we were living and how were we treating our children and what did we teach them? I mean, he already told us to the third and fourth generation, and he warns you, teach your children. So we better get it right. We have to get it right. If we don't get it right, we're done. That's it for today, everyone. I thank you so much for spending your time today on Shabbat with me. All praise and appreciation be given to our Creator of the heavens and the earth. And we do have a Dvareem cahoots that I want to share with you. Wow, let me see here.
Hallelujah.